Hello, my name is Mike, and this is my wife Tanya. We're the Davises from Orrington, Maine, and we're just going to share a little bit at Patty's request on how did we have, how did we adopt a boy from Nepal. We have a son, Trek. He's 13, and God called us to adopt him from Nepal, which is completely on the other side of the earth from where we live in Orrington. So you'd have to go way back to when we were married. We had our first child, Robin. She was our daughter, born in 1994. And after that, we were unable to have any more children, and we didn't really want any because our life was busy. We liked to travel, and there was a lot of things we wanted to do with just three. We weren't interested in more than one child at that time. So some time went on, and for money we did foster care where we took in children and cared for them.
Well, not really for money.
No, yeah, it was for
but
money.
I mean,
Truthfully it was.
Well, truthfully, you were working, of course, and I wanted to be able to help contribute, and so I was trying to think of what could I do, to help. And so we had friends that were doing foster care, and if you did therapeutic care, you did get paid money, but I think it sounds bad to say we're doing foster care and it wasn't just for the money. It was to help kids until they either could be reunited with their family or be adopted into a forever home. But we had no desire at all to adopt at that point. It was strictly to help kids transition, but I did get paid. Okay, sorry. It just sounded
anyways,
bad.
in that process of doing foster care to supplement our income, Tanya really had the desire in her heart because one of our foster children was an infant briefly, and I think it was from at that point she really had the desire to have more children, and we couldn't biologically, so the desire to adopt really started to build in her heart, not me. So
yeah,
she started praying about adoption, and we just went on, and she had friends who gave her some counsel on what to do with this desire that she had and I did not have, and they counseled her to just keep it in prayer and not stop praying about it, and
to have God speak to
God
you to be the one to start the process,
right?
You to have the desire and to mention it. And so at the beginning I did pray a lot about it, but I did that for so long and for so many years that it got to the point where I didn't pray about it anymore. And that's when the church, we go to Calvary Chapel, Orrington, and they had an adoption seminar, which we thought was going to be all about domestic adoption, which was what I wanted to do, because that's the only thing that I thought of. I never entertained the idea of doing international adoption. But prior to the week, when they were mentioning it at church, you came home on a Sunday and you're like, so, are we going to go to the adoption seminar? And I'm like, I don't know. Do you want to? And he's like, well, I thought you wanted to. So I'm like, well, okay. So we signed up and we went. And, but before that, the week leading up to it, it was interesting because every morning when I would make Robin's lunches for school, I kid you not, on the news, there was something about adoption, and it had to do with China every single day of the week. And so when we went to the adoption seminar, we found out that it was all international adoptions, which we never dreamed of. But anyway, so
anyways, that led us to that seminar was huge in speaking to our hearts, that we we wanted to adopt, do a China adoption, and the Lord confirmed that to us in numerous ways. And
well, really more to you. I just wanted to, but the
Yeah.
Lord spoke to you specifically.
the Lord confirmed it, and we adopted our daughter from China, Noelle, in 2008. And she was just a huge blessing to our life, and we just immediately knew we wanted to adopt again.
Another little girl from China.
Another little girl from China was what we wanted to do, and what we thought we would do, and we thought it would just all work the same. But that wasn't the plan, and our course changed when we were praying about adoption and what we wanted to do.
I wasn't praying about it. I just knew what I wanted to do. There was really no prayer. Really, I'm being honest. On my part, there was really no specific prayer. I just wanted to go to China again, adopt another little girl, one close to Noelle's age, and that was kind of the plan. But we began to talk about it at a season where financially we had gone from one income and it had dropped 50%. We had lost because people weren't paying and it just didn't make sense financially.
Mm-hmm.
But unbeknownst to me, you started praying specifically about adoption, and that we wouldn't just go where we wanted to go, but we would go where God was calling us to go.
Yeah, that's true.
So
one night things got really strange. I wasn't sleeping very good, and I had it was kind of like a dream, but it really wasn't. It was just like these bright letters I could see in my head. And this probably won't make any sense to any of you listening, but I'll just say what happened. These letters in my head said BANAU, and I had no idea if it was just me or if God was trying to show me something. So I woke up and I just started my day with my devotions like I typically do. But the letters really were making me curious. So I Googled BANAU, and the first thing that came up in my Google search was Nepal opening their doors to adoption, and BANAU had something to do with Nepal, maybe a village or something. But anyways, what had happened when I looked at that Google search, I saw that Nepal was opening its doors to adopting, and I was curious if maybe the Lord was making me aware of that through that. And
so when I woke up in the morning, the first thing out of his mouth was, "What do you know about Nepal adoptions?" It wasn't "good morning," it was, "What do you know about Nepal?" And I'm like, I don't even know where Nepal is. And so I asked him why. He told me about the dream. He showed me the Google search. And so I was just like, okay, fine. And once I realized it was in Asia and it was close to China, I'm like, cool. The kids will look, kind of like, because I wanted to go to China, And so I'm like, oh, it's fine. It's still Asia. It's, fine and good. And so he sent me on a mission that day. He's like, okay, I want you to find out what is the criteria for adopting from Nepal. And so that day I began making phone calls to different agencies, and quickly found out that you could only adopt from Nepal if you could only have 2 children, and you couldn't adopt if you had a boy and a girl. You could only have one sex. So we had 2 girls, so that made us qualify. And you could only adopt if you couldn't have any more children, and I had to have a hysterectomy at 25. So we met all the criteria for it. The only thing that at first I was just like, I don't know if I want to do that, is because I wanted a girl. We had talked about adopting a son through China, because there was a lot of kids on the waiting child or special needs. I say special needs because special needs could be nothing. It could be missing a finger or a birthmark that was visible or whatever. And so we had talked about it, but really in my heart I wanted another little girl. So I didn't just jump on board with the idea of Nepal based on this dream. I really we had to take some time and really pray about it and get on the same page, because people would have thought we were mental if we just said we're adopting a son because he had a dream, right?
Yeah.
So we took, how long did we take to pray about it? Seemed like it was
remember.
like a month or so, I think. But it seemed like, he would be sitting here and I'd be sitting over there on the couch and, having our devotions in our own places in the Bible. And he'd be like, oh, hey,
We knew it would be a huge step of faith, and God did bring me to scripture about having the faith of the size of a mustard seed, and things could happen just with a small step of faith. And I think with that verse in mind, I think we decided that we were willing to take the first step and see what would happen by just putting it out there. And we decided to fill out our application for the adoption agency, right?
Right.
That was our first course of action for
Right, because again, with the whole fighting thing, I was like, oh, well, it costs more to adopt from Nepal. And
we didn't have money to do
and like I said, that's when his income, people stopped paying. He was self-employed and people stopped paying him. And we actually got to a point where
we didn't have money.
That particular year, we were facing repossession of both vehicles and foreclosure on our home all in the same month. And so it made no earthly sense to even be thinking about it just seemed foolish. But the fact that he'd been praying about it and had that dream, and it just seemed like that's what we were supposed to do. So against all the advice of family thinking we're crazy and whatever, we decided that, okay, Lord, if this is what you're calling us to do, and me still drag my feet some, we were like, we will move forward one step at a time as you provide, because we were not going to take out a loan to
we
fund
we
this
decided
adoption.
we would borrow no money whatsoever because we couldn't even really pay our bills.
Right. So I told a close friend of mine at the time, and she had a little side gig and a little business, and she said, hey, I want to have a party, and I want to give you all of my commission to go towards this. And our application fee for Nepal was $250, and we had the party, and that's exactly what she made in commission, was $250. And so we're like, okay, wow, that's crazy. And so we took that and we started, and it went like that through. So then we looked at the next fee, whatever that was. And we had yard sales. We had things donated like diamond rings, brand new flat screen TVs. We did yard sales where we made $7,000 in a weekend in Little Orrington, Maine, which is crazy. But we had so many people donating stuff, and it was just
people and strangers. It was just weird that they were donating money to this cause. And
because we didn't ask for money. We had seen through Stephen Curtis Chapman Show Hope. They help families with adopt, and he's a big advocate for helping. And he's like, everybody needs to be doing something to help orphans. And they said, if you don't feel called to adopt, you can help people adopt. And so, because when we adopted Noelle, we did it all on our own, and and so we really had our eyes open to, wow, there's actually like ministries where people can help other families adopt. And we thought, there's nothing we'll just put it out there that this is what we're doing, and we don't have the funds, but we feel God is calling us, and we'll do it until he closes a door. Until he closes a door, we'll keep taking steps forward.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And there were a couple times during the process that even the adoption agency, can't remember what it was, but because we weren't working with a Christian agency, because America World is who we used for China, and they didn't have a Nepal program. We asked them if they would open one or start one. It would be their first pilot family, but they couldn't. And I cannot remember. I don't know if you can remember, but there did come a point where they told us that we could stop the Nepal process. I can't remember why, and that they had twin boys from Africa that they would, that we could work towards.
Oh yeah, because the
adopting.
agency did numerous countries.
Yeah, but we said no, and it was because I can't remember what that door was that seemed closed, but it really wasn't a closed door. So we continued. So we ended up getting a referral for Trek ahead of some other families, which really didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But 5 days after we got his referral, right, the United States closed their doors to adoption.
They shut down Nepal adoptions.
So we could go and adopt him legally, but we could not bring him into the United States. Yeah. So we thought that was a closed door, and our adoption agency said I wouldn't move forward. And we had to send like $10,000 to them to accept his, either $7,000, something, to accept his referral and move forward. And they said, that, we wouldn't do it. Don't do it. But we said, no, we're going to do it. Because we had been doing some research, and we saw that if we couldn't bring him home on an orphan visa, we could bring him home on a family visa, which would mean we would have to move to Nepal and live there for 1 year, and then we could bring him home on a family visa. So I wasn't really prepared to do that, but it wasn't a closed door. So
there was no closed door yet.
So
we had to keep going.
Yeah. So do you remember the whole situation? We ended up flying to Nepal, not knowing full well that we could not bring this child home.
Yeah. God provided money, travel money, for us to go.
We had no connections. We didn't know who we were going to have for translator. We didn't we were going to Nepal on our own.
Yeah.
So
we received two $5,000 grants, one from our church and one from another church.
Yeah. And do we want to share about? Do you want us to share about the whole Ken connection church? Okay, so we didn't know what we were doing, so we went to see our pastor, Ken Graves, and he connected us to Steve Simpson, which connected us to Fran and Mary. And because our thought was that we didn't know if we could ever get him into this country. We weren't sure. And so we presented it to Steve that we don't know what God's doing here, and it's possible, we could adopt him and get him out of this orphanage, like this pagan orphanage, and get him into a Christian children's home. And we're connected with Calvary Chapel, no less, and know that he's going to be raised, and we would just financially support him. And
just the fact that this connection was made between us and our church and the orphanage where our son was living was only 1 mile away from the Calvary Chapel Christian Children's Home.
That just blew us away.
And we knew
that was
God.
Crazy.
When we found that out, we knew God was working something very special.
So we went over, and we were there for 3 weeks, and we adopted Trek. And we met with Fran and Mary before we got Trek. and as soon as we received him and adopted him, we went straight over to the girls' home, and we just immediately tried to get him to be as comfortable with Free and him there, that as he was with us, so that it wouldn't be hard, because we didn't want to rip him from one home and have him be stuck with us in a hotel for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, and then rip him away from us and be like, well, here you go, this Franny's going to take care of you for, you know what I mean? So we wanted it to be like, no, she's just part of the family. This is, like another mother, And so that's what we did. And we had to leave him, and we left him, and not knowing when or if we would be able to come back. And so we came home and really didn't know what to do. And there was it 19 families, 19 pipeline families?
Around there.
Something like that. And we found out that a lot of them were hiring private investigators and immigration lawyers to fight and prove that their children were true orphans.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't do it because the Lord had provided all the money, but we're like, we don't have the money for the investigator. We don't have the money for this lawyer. Like, what are we going to do? And because that was another, $20,000 or something crazy like that.
It was money. We
just kind of sat. We just prayed and we just kind of sat on it. I think almost a couple weeks, maybe more. And a friend really pushed for us to, you guys have got to talk to at least get some counsel from a lawyer. And we're like, I don't know, we don't have the money, and da-da-da-da-da. And she's like, well, I will pay for the first, at least the consultation, which I think ended up being free. I'm not sure.
Did you say we're back in the States?
We were in the States at this point.
We're back.
It probably had been a month.
Yeah.
And we talked to a really good lawyer, and she said not to worry about the money. We could pay it in small payments, and we ended up having a spaghetti dinner at our church, and I think we raised $10,000 or something crazy. Stupid money. I mean, again, in Little Orrington, Maine, everybody was doing. I went to all these local restaurants, and I had people say, "Oh, I'll give you all the spaghetti sauce you want. Oh, I'll give you all the noodles spaghetti that you want. I'll give you all the salads. I'll give you the drinks. I'll give you everything was free."
What was happening was not making any sense.
It wasn't making sense at all, and we were just, everybody was buying. We made this little the little take a sad Trex picture on it, and
Texas Roadhouse gave us hundreds of
tons of rolls. I mean, they gave us so much stuff, and so we did. And then we have the programs at the church, the women's program, the men's program, and
all of our friends were eating Texas Roadhouse rolls for days and days.
Yes, and everybody was helping us. It was crazy, and we had such a huge turnout that it affected tithing the next day, because Big Jim is what they call him. He's not there anymore. One of our associate pastors. He now pastors another Calvary. But they said that it actually, I think, affected. So he's like, we're not going to hold fundraisers like this, the day before, Sunday. It was crazy.
Sorry, Calvary.
Sorry. But it was totally a God thing. So, anyway, that was wild.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it was nuts. And so, anywho, we were waiting for these approvals. We started to see approvals were coming in, and kids were getting cleared, they won their case and they're going to be able to go home and be adopted. But everything was kind of going in order. There was an order, and where our name was, it was it skipped right over us. And we're like, what on earth is going on? And so we, whatever. I was gone somewhere. I don't know where I was. I just know when I saw you, you're like, by the way, we're buying tickets, or I bought tickets, and we're going to Nepal. This is when we're leaving. So mark the calendar. And I was a mess. I was in my closet crying. I was just I don't know what we're going to do. We hadn't gotten his approval, and what are we doing? But
I think something had something to do with that. When Noelle was little, she started to sing some songs when we were in the car. I remember this one time we were just driving, and I was praying to myself, and she's belting out, "Our God is mighty to save, mighty to save."
Yes.
And it just did something to me, and I think a switch went off,
And you're like,
that said we had to go.
that's what it
We had
was.
to go do that.
I remember, yes.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, I remember that.
Yeah, and how old would she have been? Just like,
Little.
yeah.
2?
Yeah. I just
3?
remember that.
Very little.
Yeah. She's
And
like,
so,
our God is mighty. I mean, she was singing it passionately in the car seat.
and I wasn't there.
No, you weren't there.
So when I remember that because you came home and you're like, this is what happened. And by the way, we're going and this is when we're going.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So that was 3 months later. We left not knowing. And that was stressful, you know, because we were over there and we didn't know.
Hard.
I mean, I was kind of in a cranky mood, you know. It was hard to really relax and enjoy because we were like, really, I was high strung.
And you're, I don't know if it was the first time or the second time, but you were having, you know, physical problems because of nervous problems, and your parents said they would come get you.
Oh, I was a nervous mess. We had to go down. We drove to New York to leave, you know,
That's
for a
what
flight.
We could afford was
and
flying.
I was just, my anxiety was like through the roof. And I called them from a bathroom stall crying. And I was like, because I didn't want him to see me crying. And I'm like, I can't do this or whatever. And they're like, you don't have to. You just say the word and your dad will come and get you. And that was like, how many hours away is New York?
It was long.
They're like, we'll come and get you.
Drive.
You do not have to go to Nepal and do this. And I'm like, don't tell me that. I'm like, yes, I need to go. You're supposed to say, you're going to be fine, Tanya. You know what you got to do. Go do it. But anyway, they didn't. So, but we said our goodbyes and we hopped on that plane and off we went. And we got to Nepal and we just were waiting and praying for that stinking visa to get approved or whatever, our case to be approved.
Right.
And so finally, I think, because we had return flights, and we were kind of like that last week, we were like, between him and I, we're like, oh, what are we going to do? Do we extend our stay? Because he brought his work with him because we didn't even know about work. Like he had to be working.
Yeah.
And he's like, maybe I go home and you stay for a little while longer, or, you know, we just were trying to figure it out. But that third week, I think towards the beginning of that third week or so, I can't remember, we got the call that we had our approval. And we hooped and hollered. All the girls hooped and hollered with us. They're like, did you get it? So that was fun. And then it was getting his visa before we had to leave. And but God did his thing. And we ended up picking up his visa on the way to the airport to come home.
That was March 2011.
Yep, and we arrived home on my birthday, March 31st.
So we didn't choose to adopt a son from Nepal. God
told us.
God gave a word, and I looked it up on Google, and that's how we found out about Nepal.
Yep.
Because it was not even in our mind at all.
And so then we're home. We'll just finish out the story quick. We were home, and we had our teenager. And then we had Noel, and we had Trek. And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, I'm stuck here. I'm home. I'm not stuck, but I'm like, I'm home with 2 kids. I'm like, maybe we should do foster care again. Not to adopt again, because we weren't going to do that. So we got relicensed. And we told them that we would take a kiddo that was more toddler age, school age. We said, don't call us for babies. Yeah. They called us with all babies. And we said no to, I think, probably 6. And they finally called us on a Sunday, a Columbus weekend, which is another whole story. Because all of our girls were either born or on Columbus weekend, or we got referrals or whatever on Columbus weekend. And we said yes. And we brought her home. And she never left. So we ended up adopting our third child, kiddo, fourth, third girl, from the through the foster care system. And so now we have yeah, Robin's 28, almost 28. Trek is, Noelle is almost 16. Trek is 13. And Ella is 9. And we're done. That's our story.
When Mike and Tanya had to leave, Trek stayed with us, and I had the privilege of caring for him, along with all the girls helping. And he was just a pleasure. I can still remember at breakfast him like fooling around and singing and doing his little face actions and dancing around. He was a pleasure.